the best part of doing a podcast with you is that I get to talk to you.
I miss you.
And I get to see you.
I get to see, like, on work time. Like, it's not like I'm trying to call you in the middle of work and I know I'm not going to catch you because you're in the middle of your work. I just have a moment.
Yeah, this is considered work.
Hey, Simon, it's a real job to be your friend.
What does that mean?
I'm just joking. That's like the it's what we're saying implicitly, but also it's such a joy. Well, no, it's because we both love what we do for a living, and it all makes the most sense. We get to say my favorite people to spend time with outside of work and share life with are also people that's how, for me, that's how I know I'm on the right track professionally.
So, I did no preparation for this interview whatsoever. Perfect. Because whatever. You are famous because of Milk Bar. And I have a couple questions about that I personally would like to know, that weirdly in all these years I've never asked you. But you're famous for Milk Bar. You're famous for your Netflix TV show. You're famous for your books, your cookbooks, and your new book. What's it called? The new book's called Dessert Will Save the World.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Like, have you ever seen anybody angry eating ice cream? It just doesn't exist. It does not exist.
They're a little less angry. They might still be angry, but the ice cream,
right? He's like, I'm so mad with this chocolate cake. And what I thought, you talk about those things a lot, but there's a Christina Tosi behind all of that magical stuff that I have the deep honor and pleasure of knowing. And I feel selfish knowing that. And I thought that would be a place for us to go today. Some of the questions I have, we've never talked about before. Okay, anyway, I'm just going to jump right in. So here's the Milk Bar question I have. I've never asked.
Can't wait.
How did you come up with cereal milk ice cream, which is honestly one of the greatest gifts to humanity? I would put the discovery of penicillin and cereal milk ice cream way up there.
That's very sweet. For me, it's like when you do something that's like bigger than yourself in a way that's like, I don't know, it just kind of happens, and my only job is to be the conduit for it. In life, I imagine you must feel like that all the time. Now I'm going like, oh wow, there are these questions that I have never actually asked you either. For me, cereal milk is the representation of making someone, that angry person eating ice cream on a bad day, just making them feel like seen and loved, trust somewhere at some point in their life where they felt like calm and safe and trusted and seen without any of the other, or this is my name, or this is who I am, or this is what I do. There's like a sacred moment that happens, I suppose, in a bowl of cereal at some point in all of our lives, no matter what the cereal is.
There's the magic of that product. It's not just tasty ice cream, because there are many flavors of tasty ice cream that I love, but there's no flavors of tasty ice cream that so tap into nostalgia and childhood.
I mean, if you make dessert, of course, make dessert can save the world. It makes people happy. It does the thing. Like, dessert's a sacred space. Like, aside from a tasting menu only restaurant where someone's going to serve it to you, like, dessert's an opting course, right? Like, it's also not, it's something people choose to do, not something that people have to do. And I take that choice personally. Like, I take it seriously. I take it personally. That is a sacred space that people invite you into. Like we say in the book, like, dessert has this habit of showing up, right? Like, of course, cake shows up at birthdays, but like, if there's a wake or a funeral or like, dessert is there. Dessert has this way of showing up for people in these moments, and that's sacred stuff. That's a really sacred
I love
stuff.
the fact that you think about that dessert as a discretionary course. So you're not actually competing against other desserts. You're competing against, let's get out of here and go watch a movie at home. You're competing against, I've put on so much weight. You're competing against like all of those things.
You're
but
competing
you're not competing
with people's
against
emotional
other food.
neuroses, like their dark sides, meet their emotional child, meet their intellect. Like, you're in the middle of an argument largely in someone's head, or some brilliant resolution where some of us just like in the head, be quiet. We're going to Milk Bar. We're doing the thing. We're whatever. I don't know how to do this without it being weird, but my real vision for fine dining is that dessert follows you home and is like there for you in bed. That, or like they give you pajamas to change into, so that when you just like dessert, then sleep.
By the way, I do this frequently. I go for a nice meal.
Yeah.
I'll have my meal, and I will very often say, "I'd like this dessert to go, please." And so you don't have to find a way to deliver it at home. You just have to find an elegant way to put it in a cooler pack so it stays fresh and is beautifully presented when you get home. That's all. I do that regularly.
Yeah, it's not a nicety. It's like, because I want to eat this in home.
I want to eat it, but I want to eat it in about an hour.
Covers, yeah.
I want to eat it in about an hour, yeah. And I want to eat it in front of the TV. I don't want to eat it at a restaurant. Yeah. So I'm going to change subjects on you. This is a dramatic shift now. This is a dramatic shift of key. We're going to go from a major key to a minor key.
Yeah.
I regularly on this podcast will talk about vulnerability, and I will talk about during COVID that I made a rule with all my friends that there's no crying alone.
Yeah.
I talk about this idea of no crying alone. What I don't ever say is that during COVID, you and I called each other more than a couple times and cried together. And I remember the first time you called and you were going for a long walk. You'd left the house. Don't remember how it started. And I remember the preamble. You said, I don't remember what you said about how you were doing, but clearly you were in a difficult place. It was a difficult time. And you said, I could go to my husband, but he's also in a difficult place. And I don't want to add more to his plate. And so, do you have a minute? And I don't remember the conversation at all, but I remember we cried together. And I always adored you, and I've always been a fan of yours. But it was on that day, like, this friendship, like,
became real.
It was set in concrete. You know? It went from fun to solid.
Yep.
And I do you remember that day?
You know, it's funny you ask, because you're saying this, and in my head I'm like, Simon, I remember the tree I was standing under. I remember the gait, like the sort of like the way when you walk and you kind of almost walk like a soldier, where you sort of like kick your heels up a little bit, because I was just sort of like grasping for straws. The phone ringing, and I remember hearing your voice. Like, I remember where I walked. Yeah. I remember those steps.
What is it about? Why don't people call a friend in need? You know? I mean, here we are. I trust you with everything. I would call you and tell you I'm struggling. I would call you and tell you I'm hurting. I would call you and tell you I'm flailing. I would call and tell you I'm confused, I'm lost. I would call and tell you all of those things. And I want to know why other people don't. I have friends who don't call other people in times of need. And they have this weird sense of, I don't want to burden anyone with my problems. Or there's shame or embarrassment attached, especially if somebody considers themselves a high performer.
I was going to say there's probably part of it that also is, if I say it out loud and I have to hear myself, one, that makes it true. Yeah. And two, making it true means I have to admit it and then grapple with it and deal with it. And if you're talking about high performers, you're talking about people that implicitly don't want to admit defeat, and confusing vulnerability with defeat, right, is probably like number one reason why people that are high performers struggle. And then also, if you're a high performer, the second you say it out loud and you acknowledge that it's a thing, then you have to go out and solve it. And if you don't think you have a solve for it, it's too big to even conceive of stating out loud. Though, of course, the irony is, saying it out loud releasing yourself of it to someone that is trustworthy is oftentimes half, if not so much more, of the grappling with it and dealing with it and taking that first step is oftentimes so much of getting through it, getting into it, making way.
It's decompartmentalizing, right?
Because
I have friends in the military, and they do know how to compartmentalize their emotions, but they can't do it forever.
Yeah.
They can only do it for
It'll
a very
catch
short
up with
period.
you.
They can only do it for a very short period of time while they're in the moments of chaos, because they don't there is no time to deal with whatever they need with the emotions in chaos. But they will have to deal with it, otherwise that's when all the mental health challenges show up. And what I think is so interesting is you're talking about by saying it out loud, because thinking it's still ethereal, it's a thought, right?
Yeah.
But by saying it out loud to another human being, you're decompartmentalizing and saying, this is a real thing, and you can't escape it now, right? You can't
put
hide
yourself
from
on
it.
notice. Yeah.
You put yourself on notice, and that's a very scary feeling if you don't have the solution ready and lined up for the problem that you're putting out there. But that's the whole point of decompartmentalizing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you always?
Go ahead.
No, please.
I was gonna say, but for my experience with you is the most beautiful part of our friendship. Like, why did I call that day? Why were you the person that I called? It's not like I tried 6 other people. Like, I went on a walk. I knew I was going to call you. I hit Simon in my phone, and it went. And for me, the biggest piece of that, the reason I knew that you were a person to call was because of the conversations we were having beforehand, which is, you not only gave me the space for vulnerability, but you gave me language around the fact that people that believe part of their work, and that is part of my belief. I believe that so much of my work and what brings me joy and why I work as hard as I do is because I want to show up and help people. And when we're having our high times and our high moments, you always have this beautiful way of saying man, when we're high, but let's not forget, to your point, that we can't feel high always, right? We're going to feel grounded, and part of feeling grounded means that we're going to dip below feeling, level set. And that happens, and it's frequent. And when it does, let's not run away from it. And it almost made me feel stronger to call you to say, oh shit, I'm having a moment that's this moment that we're talking about. It was an invitation in to say, you feeling this way actually is validating that your work matters and that you're on the right course and that you're human and you're all of these things. There's an insight here.
There's an insight here that is really important, right? Which is, most of us, and we're all guilty of this, present company included, right? Most of us offer to support our friends when we see that they are hurting or in pain, which is like calling to buy insurance while the house is on fire, right? And the insight is that we ignore the possibility of hard or bad times with ourselves or the people we love. We ignore them in the good times, because why would we? It's like when the stock market is rallying, nobody thinks about it crashing, right? And the one thing we did, probably by accident, but the one thing that we did is, in the high times and the celebrations and the high fives and the woohoo and this is life forever and it's never going to change, we were prescient enough to say, hey, isn't this amazing? But remember, when this feeling goes away, we have to be there for each other. In other words, we bought the insurance early. You knew you had a policy when your feelings crashed.
I had my Simon Sinek friend policy already executed, babe. It was filed away. I knew I had it.
You just had to be like, I know it's in here somewhere. Right. Exactly. And I think what you're talking about is the responsibility of good friends. And I would even go so far as the responsibility of good friends, the responsibility of good leaders, and the responsibility of good coworkers, which is in the very high times to start writing policies, to start writing insurance policies saying, look, I hope you never have to use this. I hope your house never burns down. But on the horrible occasion that it may, just remember you've got this policy, cash it in. And I think this is huge, that in high times we're not Debbie Downers by reminding people, hey, this isn't going to last. We're writing insurance policies.
That's
such
a
good insight.
It's applauding the high times and being like, but to be clear, no matter what the time is, I'm always your friend. Like, there's no fair weather here. Of course, things are great right now. And to be human is going to be that there's going to be a time in life. And I want to show you what our friendship can be. Yeah.
So the question I have is, were you always good at asking for help, or is it a skill you had to learn?
I'm in fact terrible at asking for help. In a very interesting way, you are calling out a dynamic of our friendship that is, I would say, very bespoke to our friendship. I'm terrible at asking for help. I am not great. I'm great at being vulnerable in certain moments with certain people, and the rest of the time, I plow through it. So I'm not a one-size-fits-all in this spirit of asking for help and vulnerability.
So what is the reason you don't want to ask for help?
I think probably the tricky part of, like, depending on where you're at in life, the things that made you successful oftentimes are the things that hold you back once you make to certain tiers of, air quote, success. And I think that's part of it, right? To be an entrepreneur, to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to be determined. You have to go at it, like, always stay in the game, never quit. Figure it out. That's not to say you can't ask for help along the way, but you have to be really determined to, solving problems, and be okay that sometimes help doesn't come and you still have to succeed. And then all of a sudden being grown up and being like, oh, if I want the richness of life and surround sound, I have to invite other people in. I can't just, to your point, I can't just show up for people. I have to invite other people in. Otherwise, I stop losing the connection of, like, why cereal milk does the thing, or you stop losing the richness of friendship. So how can you give 6 friends a birthday party at your own birthday party if they aren't true friendships? And that's a dynamic that is definitely up on my personal improvement goals list.
I'd like to call bullshit, if I may. Because I know entrepreneurs who don't ask for help, and they can only reach a certain level because they have to be in every meeting, they have to make every decision. And you can't achieve what you've achieved in the scale that you've achieved it without being forced. Even if you did it kicking and screaming, but you had to delegate, and you had to let go, and you had to ask people to do things and own things and run things and take accountability for things because you physically could not. Nobody can achieve scale without maybe not asking for help, but getting it.
Perhaps it's, for me, I'm being very literal about the I need help, will you help me delivery versus getting help. And part of the getting help for me is you have to be fearless as you're building, and then you have to be fearless from a failure standpoint, I suppose, both in building and when, to your point, when you're scaling and you invite other people in to the party, truly into the inner circle. You have to really trust and be fearless about the fact that people are going to fail. You're going to fail. People are going to let you down. You might let people down, whether you're trying to or not. And just having, like, an emotional vigor about you that says, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay.
Is your team good at asking for help?
Sometimes, probably not. Oh Lord, this is really a deep dive. Probably not. They're probably, I would say that they're very similar to me. And I don't know I've ever had someone say, I need help, but rather an invitation in that sort of implies, I'd love your brain share. I'd love your feedback. Right. I need your support, but not there's a little bit of this, like the fear of, like, being like, I need help, and what it implies, because that's actually, you're so great at that. You're so great at the balance of, I'm curious and I'd love for you to unlock more than what I do or don't know, without overtly being. So, like, The
What do you mean?
help me feels like I'm drowning. The help me for me feels like, I don't know how to swim, I'm drowning, I'm in over my head, as opposed to the curiosity of inviting other people to the table and saying, tell me more. Like, what don't I know? Tell me more.
Do you know one of the things that I've learned is that there's two ways of asking for help, right? Most people think asking for help is, and you said this before, is the admission of defeat.
Yes,
and so their temperament is defeated, right? I don't know what I'm doing, and can you help me? I need help. I need help. I'm drowning. I need help, right? And I've always thought of it as a mindset, which is to ask for help with confidence, right? Like, hey, can somebody please help me out here? I am completely underwater and I definitely need some help. Otherwise, I don't know, I'm going to drown or something. Like, somebody please just help me, right? And to have a sense of humor or a confidence in the asking for help is a mindset. So you're asking for the same thing with the same circumstances in both ways. In one of the cases, you're ashamed of it because as you said, that you equate it to defeat, where I've learned to disassociate asking for help with defeat and simply associate asking for help with, I just need help. I just need some help.
But that's a powerful thing.
And I think that
you know how to call it out.
I think, but what I think this conversation is doing is I want anyone who's listening to this to recognize that asking for help is normal.
Yeah.
And not only is it normal, it's really nice. I mean, and I'll go back to this, which is you and I've always got along. We've always had fun. We've always been friends. We've been friends for many, many years. But that one day, under that one tree, I remember where I was standing. You remember the tree. I was standing next to my kitchen counter when the phone rang. Like, I remember exactly where I was. And we remember specifics of where we were, like when the moon landed. We remember where we were when we watched, Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, because these things have such impact in our lives. And so how powerful is it that something as innocuous as a friend calling and saying, do you have a minute? That you and I have internalized it like